What is going on, team? This is Paintball Duke 22 here, and this is Questing in Minecraft episode 48 part 2. This is an intermediate redstone tutorial dealing with logic gates and other fun redstone uses. So let's make it daytime really quick, and I want to explain a few things as we're getting into this. So here I have a few blocks, separate blocks that are set up. Now I'm just kind of doing this to show you what kind of blocks allow redstone current to be put into them as an input, and which will transmit the power over to adjacent blocks. You notice glass will not. Glass will not do that. Pistons would be extending like they would do with all the others, but they do not, sadly. But we can work around that. This right here is you may have seen this if you watch Co's Quest. This is basically what he uses for a light system for his darkroom trap. And this is just like a quick, like a signal pulse really quick. It sends a quick pulse to this side. When you flick the switch, the power from the switch gets transmuted through the block and into this, which keeps this lit up. And this torch goes out. On this side, the input goes into this piston, which extends it. Now, as soon as I flick this switch, the power immediately is going to go off to this torch, or to this repeater. The reason why this works is because every single time that you have like redstone and then a torch and then redstone and then a torch, every single time that there's a torch, there's a little bit of a delay with redstone. So what's going to happen is when we flick the switch back up, that piston is going to collapse, and in the time that there is a split-second delay, this piston, or this is going to be off, so that piston can register that it's closed, and then this torch will come on because the block will be off, and it's going to send the signal through this repeater back into this current. So it's going to go on very quickly and off, because as soon as this part goes off, this wire turns off and this torch comes on, which quick pulses the piston. So I'll go ahead and show you guys an example of how that works. So you see, there's kind of a delay, and then it does a quick pulse and returns back to its normal state. So I'll go ahead and show you guys in quick motion, and I'll show you what this side does. You can see that the piston gets returned before before this one activates, and that's how Co did it, just with this simple little gate right here. So now I kind of wanted to give you guys a little bit of a behavioral example here. So we have powered redstone that it can climb up the side of a block and end up being on top of it. Now, a way that you can stop it from climbing up on top of the block is to put a block over it. See, you notice here that it's basically essentially the same thing. It's just that this is not powered because this block is kind of blocking the path. Another handy little thing is this glass right here. You notice that the redstone is still lighting up and heading over to this area, even though there's glass here. That's because the glass doesn't stop the current from flowing through it. It's almost like it treats the glass like an air block, which is cool. You can have some pretty handy little things come from that. But anyway, let's go ahead and show you this one really quick. This is a quick pulse. You notice that the duration of the button stays down longer than the piston kind of rapidly pulses up and then comes back down. And that's just because the button goes into this input, which momentarily turns this off, which allows this to come on. But as soon as that does, this torch comes on, this torch goes off, and then this torch comes on, which turns this torch off again. So that way, since there's only 3 NOT gates that it's going through, it means that it's got a quicker speed than the whole duration of the button. So let's go ahead and get into the logic gates, the main reason why you're here. So this is some intermediate logic gates that you can find on the Minecraft wiki. So here's an Xor gate. You see it is pronounced Xor. So this is basically a 2-input logic gate, and this is kind of what it looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a practical example, something that you might be able to help you understand this a little bit better. I know in my house in my kitchen there is 2 light switches that are connected to the same light fixture. So when I flick the one light switch that's over by the kitchen counter, the lights come on. And there's another switch that's by the garage door, so if we flick that, the lights will turn off, or vice versa. If the lights are off and we flick the one by the garage door, the lights come on. Now this Xor gate basically works, and it says when input A and input B are not equal to each other, which means this one is 0 and this one is 1, the non-powered state and the powered state, the output will be on in its powered state. And when they're equal to each other, it will be in its off state. So when they're both powered, it'll be off, and when they're both non-powered, it will be off as well. So let me go ahead and break down this logic gate for you. So the first input and remember, this is a very, very symmetrical design for this logic gate. So the input feeds into this block, which when this input is on, it turns this torch off. Now this torch is powering the redstone that's in front of it, but it's also powering this block right here. Now, like with an example I think I just totally skipped over back here. Yeah, you can see here, you would think that if you powered this redstone and stuck redstone into the wire that it would transmute the power on. Well, it doesn't, because this redstone is acting as an input to the block. So the block is receiving its state, but it's not going to pass it on to redstone wire. It's going to pass it on to a block that's going to take the power. Now the way to get around this is if you put a repeater, it acts kind of like a power injector almost. Like, it basically takes the power from the redstone and turns the block into a block that will give off power. So that's why this redstone lights up. And this can come in handy in a number of ways, and I'll be showing you one a little bit later. You notice it does not pass through glass, but it does pass through stone. So let's get back over here and kind of explain. So the same way, this redstone torch is powering this block since it's above it, the exact same way that the repeater was powering the one that's on the ground. So this block is now able to transmute power, and it's transmuting it to this redstone wire that's adjacent to it. Sorry, let me make it daytime. And this power that's coming from this torch and this torch, because they're both on at the same time, is turning this torch out. Now this torch really isn't important when you set the sides in equal to each other, because as soon as you set this in equal, it's going to turn this part off, which is going to turn the torch on, which is why the output comes. So let me go ahead and flick the switch and you can see the change here. So this torch goes out, and this redstone wire goes out because this torch and this torch are both out, and which allows this torch to turn on, and the block is receiving the power, so it can transmit the power to the piston. Now you notice this torch went out, so this block is no longer powered. So this redstone is being powered from this block. So you know, as soon as we flick this switch and this torch goes out, this block is going to stop sending power, so this redstone will go out. Now the reason why this works, when they're equal to each other, the thing is off, is because this torch right here, as soon as it receives the signal from this to turn itself on, it powers up both of these sides, which turns out both of these torches. So I'll go ahead and give you that example. So this torch is now powering both sides, which makes the output inactive. So Hope you kind of understand how that is, and this is how you build it. This is very, very, very similar to the one on the Minecraft wiki, and you can take it as you will. So the next gate is, like you would have guessed, it's the inverse of the Xor Gate. It's the Xnor Gate. Now, it does essentially the same thing, except by default the output is active, not inactive. It's built a little bit differently. You notice there's still 3 torches there. This block and the block over there are receiving power from the redstone torch here and the redstone torch that's over here. So these torches are off. As soon as one of these torches becomes inactive, this block will stop receiving power, and this one will come on, and it will end up lighting this redstone, which shuts this power off. So let me go ahead and give you an example, and we'll flick the switch. So this torch goes off, which means this block stops getting power. So this torch comes on and sets this redstone and ignites that. So that allows this torch right here to turn off. And the output comes right under this block here and goes out. So you notice when we flicked this right here, now this block, not only is it powering this redstone torch when it's like this, it's not only powering this redstone torch, it's also powering the redstone that's right here, because the redstone is adjacent. So when you flick the switch, this one goes out. You notice on the other side when we flick it, this will go out also. Well, this redstone right here and this redstone right here both feed into this block as inputs. So since they are both inactive right now, this torch is able to come on, and this torch is sending its signal straight down and making the output be powered. So it's kind of the same thing as this one, except the output is active by default. When the inputs are not equal to each other, it turns off instead of on like this one. And so this Xnor Gate is the inverse of the Xor Gate. So let's move on to the next gate. It's the implies gate. Now the implies gate is basically set up where by default the output is active. There's only one possible combination of the levers to be flicked for the output to come off. So if you flick input B, nothing happens. And if both of the inputs are checked, nothing happens. Now the only way to make anything happen is by hitting input A by itself when input B is still off. If input B ever goes on, it extends. So that is a very, very simple implies gate. And they are active by default. The output is active by default. So now we're getting into an NOR latch. Now an NOR latch is also called a memory cell. And the memory cells, kind of think of it as when you input a signal, it stores that signal until it receives an input from a different input. The cell itself is this right here. So you see, let me just kind of explain how this is working. So this block with the redstone torch on it. So the redstone, so how you build it, I'll kind of give you an example. You put the block down and you put a redstone torch on it, and then you set the redstone dust here, and that receives the power from this. And then you stick a block right here. Now you see this redstone is being an input into the block. So we know as soon as we slap a redstone torch on this, it's going to go out because it's receiving power. And then we can just route it back around this way. So let me go ahead and clear up, and I'll show you guys how we can change the state of this and how it stores it. So here we have one input. So we know as soon as this block right here receives power, it is going to turn this torch off, which we can tell that this piston is going to retract, and this torch, since this is not going to be powered anymore, is going to turn on. Well, the power from this torch is going to end up sending its signal back into this block, which holds its state until this torch goes out. So let me give you an example. We'll go ahead and flick this switch. So you notice that the redstone current that was here now switched to here, and this torch came up. So this, we can hit this as many times as we want. It's not going to change its state until we hit another input, which feeds into the other side of the memory cell. So these are kind of handy because they have two outputs and they can do different things, and you can slap things on it. So that's how a memory cell works. So you could have it be you push one button to open your door and you push another button to close your door. Push one button to turn off your lights, push one button to turn on your lights. It's that simple. So now we're going to get into an RS NAND latch. Now an RS NAND latch is essentially the same thing as an RS NOR latch, except the outputs and inputs both have NOT gates on them. So by default, the outputs are in their default state. Now the thing about an RS NAND latch is when one of the inputs is triggered, instead of like with the RS NOR latch, as soon as one side is triggered, you can hit that button again and again and again and it's not going to do anything. Well, with an RS NAND latch, if you have one input taken care of and you can hit the other one as many times as you want, it's not going to do anything. And I totally just burned out that torch. So let me fix that. Okay. So, we see when we flicked this switch that this piston retracted because this output changed from its active state to its inactive state. But we notice when we flick this, the other piston doesn't change its state because this is kind of locking it in place. But if we let go of this piston and did it, then that's fine. But we know that this one won't work because it's still receiving its signal from this input. So that's how an RS NAND latch works. It's not really that practical in Minecraft, but I did want to cover it and show you kind of how it works. So we take our input, and our input ends up turning this torch off, which allows this torch to come on, which sends a signal to this, which shuts this off. And it's kind of like a symmetrical thing where when this one is switched, this torch, not only is it powering this half of the cell, but it's also keeping this side powered, so it's not going to change its state even if you select the input. This torch will go off, but the input is still, this torch right here is not going to turn on until this one goes off. So that is how an RS NAND latch works, and the other side is exactly the same way. It's just kind of mirrored. So now I'm going to go ahead and cover a few very handy, they're not really logic gates, they're just really handy redstone tools that you can use. This one right here is called a rapid pulsar. Now, the rapid pulsars, they are able to very, very rapidly turn on and turn off a signal. Now you notice you hear the hissing sound. That is the torches actually burning themselves out. And let me go ahead and give you an example of what happens when a torch gets burnt out. If you have this here and you stick a torch on top of it, and we'll have a redstone input and a lever. So when we turn this input on, the torch goes out. When we turn it off, the torch goes on. Well, we know, well, one thing is if you get this going too fast, you can actually end up burning out the torch. So no matter when it's on or off, it burns out for a split second. So we can turn it on, off. Let me burn it out really quick. So on, and eventually it comes back. It just needs a few seconds to recover and reset itself. Well, if you had any less than these 4 torches, these kind of go around in a circle pattern. Let me go ahead and flick this so you can see it. I'm going to disable this noise maker but so you can still see. You see it goes here, then it'll go here, and it kind of, while one torch is resetting itself from being burnt out, the next one lights up the stuff, and this is a rapid pulsar. It's very handy. You can use it for a lot of different things. I'm going to go ahead and show you one example of it. The thing that I like about this version of a rapid pulsar, though, is they are able to have an on-off switch. This right here is another example of a rapid pulsar, but they are not able to have an on-off switch because the directional repeaters, if you end up applying power to both sides or to one side for too long, this stays lit and it sends the signal to this, which keeps this side lit, and it just would stay on. Let me go ahead and give you an example of that. So if you did that, it would stay lit and it wouldn't work at all. So that's how you start this kind of rapid pulsar. I do prefer this kind of rapid pulsar though, because you can turn it on and off. But that is how that one works. So now I'm going to go ahead and get into clocks. Now, the most common is a 5 clock, and what a 5 clock is it kind of just turns on a signal, turns off a signal, turns off a signal, and turns on a signal. Not as quick a rate as a rapid pulsar, but it's a steady pace. Let me go ahead and give you an example. You build a 5 clock by putting 5 blocks in this pattern, 3 there, and then redstone wrapping around, feeding into this, and it's just 5 NOT gates, kind of set up in a circular motion. And this is actually another gate that you can control with a switch. You can turn it on and off. So here you see this redstone is on, and it's powering this block, which turns this torch off. Well, since this torch is off, it's not sending its signal on to the next one. But when I flick this switch, you see that it just kind of keeps going around and around in a circle. You can follow the current. It goes there and back around up here, and it'll keep going non-stop until we flick the switch or whatever. Another version of this 5 clock, you can use 5 diodes. Now I have these delays kind of turned up so you can see a little bit better, so the current moves a little bit slower. But this one is not one that you're able to turn off without removing a piece of redstone. That's why I like this version with the NOT gates better. But you can start this up by pressing the button, and you see it goes around in a circular motion, and it's just going to keep going around. However, the only way to stop it is to actually turn it off that way. Because if you were to have another input going into one of these, and you had a torch, or a lever, let's say, that was applying constant power, anytime you're applying constant power to a thing with diodes, it's going to send the power. So the power would go here, this would stay lit, this would stay lit, this would stay lit, this would stay lit, and eventually this would stay lit, which means we'd have just a circle of power again, like I showed you on this. So this is just kind of like a slowed down version of this kind of rapid pulsar. Another useful one is a 4 clock. Now this is it's a 4 clock. It uses NOT gate here with a little bit of some trickery. So let me go ahead and explain how this works. I'll go ahead and start it up. So the current goes from this torch down into this torch, which you see this one alternating. Every time this redstone right here goes powered, it powers this block, which turns off the torch. And since this torch turns off, it makes this block be non-powered, so this torch comes on, and it sends its signal to this one. So you can see it kind of working in this circular motion. It's a 4 clock, it's not a 5 clock. I believe the only difference is the timing is a little bit... Let me go ahead and see if I can see what the... Yeah, the timing on this one is a little bit faster than the 5 clock because it's not going through as many steps. Okay, the last gate that I wanted to talk about today before I get into the more advanced, the more difficult to understand redstone, the flip-flops that a lot of people don't understand, but I'll go ahead and try to break it down as best as I can for you guys. But first I have a dispenser here, a couple dispensers that have arrows in them. And this is it's hooked up to a rapid pulsar. So we have our rapid pulsar here with the switch here that turns it on, and the redstone is coming down here. Now, the thing about these dispensers is you have to supply them with a power source to tell them to turn on, even if they're receiving a signal from the even if they're receiving a signal from this redstone here, that even if it's rapidly pulsing, it's not going to go unless it has a power source telling it to turn on. This could be a redstone torch or a lever. Well, this is what I do. I usually just stick a redstone torch in the middle here, in between two of them, and watch how quick this can eat through arrows. So this setup can rapidly shoot arrows by the hundreds. I mean, we've been letting this go for maybe 5 seconds already, maybe closer to 20 seconds now. Let's go ahead and see how many arrows it's already shot through in this tiny little period of time. Let me make some room in my inventory really quick. Okay. So we have 64. So 3 stacks of 64, that's 192, and 16 is 208. So we shot through 208 arrows in like 20 seconds out of 2 of these rapid pulsars. So you can tell they are very effective. Now this is honestly the exact same thing that's in my earlier video that I show you guys the trap, or it's not really a trap. I just kind of show you guys the rapid pulsar with the dispensers that I use to shoot mobs that are at my front door. But you can see how effective it is. So thanks for watching, guys, and hopefully you are not completely bored with this series, and we will go ahead and get into flip-flops tomorrow.